Hi everyone, before we get into the conversation, let's find out what you all have in common.
In just a sec, I'm going to send you some rapid fire hot takes from our community to help each of you get to know each other better. But before we get into the hot takes, please introduce yourselves, where you're from, and without revealing too much of your stance, share why you are passionate about today's topic. So my name is Caroline. I grew up in a little town up in New Hampshire and then came into my career in politics and media. I moved to DC. I worked in the White House under President Trump's administration, and then I ran for Congress in New Hampshire. I was the youngest female nominee ever. Unfortunately, did not win my general election, but here I am working in the media. I am really excited and passionate about today's topic because Gen Z, we are the most influential voting bloc in America. We are going to shape the landscape of our country for years to come. I do believe this is a great country. We have a lot of challenges ahead of us, but it's up to us to make it better. And, I try to do that every day in my career.
I'm Sam. I work in progressive politics. I'm passionate about, progressivism, the arts, just making a better society for people and supporting creative people, creative endeavors, making sure that we live in a society that is fundamentally compassionate and caring and where everyone looks out for each other. And that's a lot of the nature of my work in politics. I'm passionate about today's topic, I think mainly because we have a lot of steps forward as a country that we have to take. There's been a lot of progress over, the 2.5 centuries that we've existed, but there's a lot more to do. And I think we are all in some ways interested in making that happen.
So, hi everyone, my name is Angela. I'm coming originally from North Macedonia, which is a tiny country in the Balkans right next to Greece. But I'm here in the US for 2 years now, studying computer science and electrical engineering. Beyond that, I'm a climate activist and founded Enroute, which is a nonprofit helping people to reduce carbon emissions. One of the things why I'm here today is because I'm an immigrant here, actually, and I am really passionate about this topic to say how this country has really changed me across the past 2 years.
Hi, my name is Anya. I am the founder of the Next Gen Come Up, which is a nonprofit dedicated towards mobilizing young people in creative activism, community service, and that's been helping to raise awareness about the importance of community engagement. I have been involved in the changemaker space since I was 5 years old. I'm 19 years old now. I am extremely passionate about this topic because I believe there are so many intersections that fall into how people kind of process patriotism and how conversations about the importance of it have changed over the years. As a Black woman, I find it really interesting to not only talk about immigration, but also talk about the intersections of race and racial experiences when it comes to talking about not only the greatness of this country, but the ways in which it's capable of changing. And I think that having those conversations across cultures, across belief systems is super, super important. So I'm really excited to be here today.
I can't believe you're only 19.
I know, that's crazy.
You're so impressive.
Thank you.
I
I appreciate it. So are
amazing.
all of you. So are all of you.
So cool.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you everyone. That was really awesome. We're so happy you're here, and I'm so happy to be here as well. Now let's get into the hot takes.
Here's how it works. When you see a new hot take in the group text, someone read it out loud and everyone agree or disagree. Only rules are you can't discuss anything related to today's topic.
All right.
Okay.
Let's go.
I guess.
Oh gosh, no.
Well, I'll read it because this is a hot take directed at me.
Yeah.
It says Dasani is the best water, period. And I disagree,
Strongly.
but it's just what I got at the restaurant that they gave me. I didn't have a lot of choices.
No,
That's
Dasani
why
is not the best water.
We need choices in competition.
So bad for climate change. Okay, next one. LinkedIn is perhaps the best social media.
I strongly disagree. I think LinkedIn is just like clickbait and toxicity and people bragging about their professional lives.
Gosh.
There's like a certain genre of LinkedIn post that's just so terribly cringy. I'm not a fan.
I don't know. I think LinkedIn has a lot of potential. I feel like there are a couple of social media apps that beat it out, but I definitely don't think it's the worst.
So
Not the
for
worst,
Lin-
but not the best. People who put any sauce on top of the fries instead of next to them are dangerous to society.
Oh, absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's
agree.
factual.
I have no stance.
Do you dip your fries or do you smother them?
Depends on my mood, I think. I don't like getting like sauce on my fingers, right? So I guess dipping is preferable.
You don't need a job to be successful.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Yeah. We all define success differently. Some people are successful. They don't have jobs. They're great moms. They're great dads.
It also depends like on how you define a job, I think.
Yeah.
Job has sort of a negative connotation, like, oh, the grind, going to work sluggishly, not really enjoying it. But if you really love the work you do,
Right.
it doesn't feel like a job.
I don't think anything that can't be verified with data should be taught or displayed in school.
Disagree.
No, I think it's important that we teach children values that doesn't have data or statistics behind it, right? Like how to be a good human being is something that you can't really back up with numerical value. Absolutely. And that should be taught in schools.
Same thing with the arts and humanities. There's not really data to support that, like, creativity is a good thing to encourage, but it just is.
Right.
And as much as I love data as a computer science student, there are some of the data that we have studied in history and geography that I haven't found it useful till now.
I have not thought about what the degree is on a triangle since freshman algebra.
I have a new one. I think canceling comedians for things they say during their comedy set is beyond ridiculous.
Agree.
It depends on what they say.
Comedy, it's supposed to be invasive, it's supposed to be offensive, and when we start censoring and silencing jokes because we don't find them funny for one reason or another, how far does that go? It's a very, very slippery slope.
I agree that drawing the line is difficult, but at the same time, some things are just not okay to say.
Yeah, bring the Oscars.
Hot take. There's nothing wrong with being ignorant. False.
Absolutely I disagree strongly.
Absolutely false. While ignorance may be bliss, it is the bane of all things equal, all things harmonious, all things communicative.
Ignorance is not as bad as active animosity, but it's still not something that we should just sweep under the rug.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Caesar salad is the best salad. It's the mother of salads.
As a person coming from the Mediterranean, I can strongly agree with this.
Oh my gosh. I don't even think American Caesar salads live up to
it doesn't.
So we don't have context to even answer this fairly.
I have no stance, really.
It's your last day on earth, you have to order a salad. Which type are you
It would
ordering?
probably not be a Caesar salad.
So there you go. Hot take. The U.S. should toss the Star-Spangled Banner as its national anthem to America the Beautiful.
This is not something I think about.
No offense.
America the Beautiful is a nice song. Star Spangled Banner, I think, has some problematic history in terms of who wrote it, but this is just not something that's usually on the top of my mind.
It would be strange if it was, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think, the Star Spangled Banner has a lot of negative history attached to it. It has a lot of baggage attached to it. There are people still to this day who are Americans that don't identify with the national anthem because of its lyrics, because of its history. So if the goal was to eliminate that concern, then I can see how tossing it to America the Beautiful would help.
Is America the Beautiful any less problematic, though? Like, American history is just filled with problems, so it might,
We should still respect and honor that history, though,
absolutely.
right? Like traditions.
Time's up. We did great. Sophie says, great job. How did that feel?
Good hot takes.
Good
Whoever
hot takes.
came up with them.
Literally.
See, you probably had more in common. We probably had more in common than we thought. Yeah.
You know?
Now, let's take this to the next level.
I'm curious to see what that means.
One at a time, text your answer to the question, is America great? Wow, that was spicy, guys. But it seems like Sophie's making her way to the couch, so we're gonna get into it.
Let's do it.
Thank you all so much for being here. Those were definitely some spicy hot takes, but we're all here today for a reason, and it's to discuss, is America great? You were each chosen for this episode because of your really unique perspectives, and our mission is, of course, to bring together people with different lived experiences and points of view so we can better understand each other. So I want to dive right in. So I'm going to pull up our group text. So Sam, you said, as an idea, yes, America is great, but in practice, no. Why do you feel that way?
I think that aspirationally, the American experiment is really admirable. Democracy, representation, that's also, obviously not uniquely American, but what we've been striving for the past, 200 some years is good, with a lot of baggage along the way. As we try to actually put that into practice, we've really come short a lot with, the United States' original sin, slavery, genocide of Native Americans, subjugation of women, so many other things. We're making progress, but at the same time, we still have a long way to go, and it doesn't feel right to me to say that we're a great country when so many Americans can't afford healthcare or, a $400 emergency expense, when so many people are in debt, when so many people's economic positions are almost defined by precarity and uncertainty. That, to me, doesn't really feel like a great country.
Angela, you said, yes, America gives freedom for people to do the thing they are passionate about. Tell me more.
As a person who is here 2 years as an international student, I'm coming from Eastern Europe, so I've been feeling like a misfit for the 18 years that I've been there, and now coming into, especially New York and Silicon Valley, were the places that I spent most of the time. If you want to take something that you're passionate about and go for it, nobody will stop you, nobody will ask you why you're doing, or nobody will shame you for that. So I felt like you have the freedom to go what you're passionate about and just start and speak, and nobody will stop you.
Anya, you gave a quick no, and you said this country has many strengths but the potential to be the blueprint of democracy, but it has simply not done a good enough job of living up to the values that it claims to hold so dear.
I think my 19 years of existing as a Black woman has informed that perspective. I also think that because I've had the privilege of having meetings with people like our Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, about things like foreign affairs, things like the United States' goals to democratize the diaspora, these conversations about America's qualification to define or teach other nations about democracy comes up a lot. And I think that because of how many flaws we've seen in our democracy, especially, over the course of the pandemic alone, it really always fascinated me how quickly our country jumps to position itself at the pedestal of what democracy means or what democracy can look like. And I just think that there's a lot of problems with that argument, and there's a lot of perspectives that are often erased from that conversation, including those of marginalized communities, people of color. And that's something that I've always just loved excavating.
I love hearing how each of your experiences have informed your perspective. And Caroline, coming to you last, you have a different perspective, saying that America is the greatest country in the history of the world, but we are seeing it slowly decline.
So I do believe that America is the greatest country in the history of this world, both in theory as an idea and also in practice. And I think there's a plethora of examples to prove that. While we're not a perfect nation, I don't want to say that. We have a past that we're not proud of. You mentioned slavery, of course. That's the scourge on our nation's history, and it forever will be. But the progress we've made as a nation since is worth celebrating. And there's a reason that the United States of America serves as the beacon of hope and freedom around this world. There is a reason that we take in more immigrants, half of the world's population, than any other country in this entire world. Last year alone, right? Americans, we're charitable people. We gave over $500 billion to nonprofit organizations and charities. People look to this country as that beacon of freedom, as Angela mentioned, because in America, regardless of race, religion, or creed, you can be anything that you want to be. Is it more difficult for some people than it is for others? Absolutely. Privilege exists. I don't deny that. But more so than any other country in this world, you can achieve that essence of the American dream, right? Which is to be successful, whether that's in your career, having a successful family, owning a home, right? Whatever success looks like to you, you can achieve that in America more than any other country. However, I do think the last few years we have sadly seen that decline. Our economy is in ruin. We're headed for a depression, the likes of which we haven't seen since the 1930s, which is devastating. Middle income, middle class Americans. We have lawlessness around this country. We have innocent civilians that are dying at the hands of fentanyl. That's an issue nobody talks about. It's the leading cause of death amongst our generation. 110,000 people died last year alone. So we have a lot of challenges, and I think they've only worsened in the past few years, unfortunately.
Clearly, we've got a lot of differences of opinion here. We've got a no, a yes, an in theory yes, in practice no, and a yes. So I'd love to start off by asking each of you, is there a moment or a story or an experience that you can remember that helped inform your stance on this question, is America great?
My childhood informed my perception of America being an exceptionally great country when, I saw my parents, who both grew up in poverty, who came from nothing. Neither of them had the opportunity to go to college or receive a higher education degree. My dad is a mechanic by trade. He literally pulled himself up from his bootstraps, did not depend on anyone, built a now successful family company that my two older brothers are, have decided to take over. I was the first in my immediate family to earn a college degree because of, the hard work of my parents. They didn't depend on anyone for that. They didn't depend on the government either. They were able to do it in this country, again, because it is the greatest country in the history of the world. And, I'm just grateful for that. And that is what formed, my opinion and belief that we are just so blessed to live here.
So my idea of the American dream was formed when I was really little. I was watching those movies, like college American movies, where people would go to college and I would see people like winning scholarships if they have done good in high school. So that was like kind of my story. I'm coming from an extremely low income household back in North Macedonia. So I had the chance, my college, to cover my tuition here. So starting from then on, I was like, I am valued in a country where I'm not even a citizen of. Back home, and being the girl interested in science, I would always like push back, always like mock, what do you think she's doing, and all this kind of stuff. And now people want to hear my story. People want to hear my perspective when I'm like giving a presentation, whether it's in school or in a company. People are not asking like, where are you coming from, or like, why are you here? They're just going and listening, which I think is the best immigrant experience I could get. I have had the chance to accomplish really a great part of the American dream with these past 2 years, which I'm so grateful about.
Anya, what are your thoughts? Would you agree with Caroline and Angela that the American dream is real and attainable in America today?
I think yes, but I think that there are often a lot of times where we are not acknowledging that the playing field is not equal for all people. And I'm saying that from a perspective of someone who grew up pretty privileged. As a young Black girl, I lived in the suburbs, but I lived in a very diverse community. So I grew up seeing everybody, being exposed to so many different cultural backgrounds, so many different socioeconomic backgrounds. Everyone in my family was very adamant about teaching me that everything that made me awesome, everything that made me beautiful and smart came from my heritage as an Afro-Caribbean woman. I didn't grow up and come into the real world with this idea that, oh God, I'm a woman, I'm Black, I have to brace myself for all these obstacles. If anything, I was the girl that would come in with her afro wall to wall and just be ready for anything, because that was the level of self-confidence and self-love that my parents were able to instill in me. But it wasn't until I entered the real world and grew up that I realized that that same pride that I had grown up feeling was the same pride that so many systems within our society was tentatively working against in communities that were filled with other people of color. So many parts of the American dream that we idolize, so many parts of the American dream that are core to our foundation and our ideals as an American and democratized society. But there are so many even more nefarious intersections within conversations about race and race relations, white supremacy and systematic racism that a lot of people don't factor into the conversation of the feasibility and attainability of the American dream, especially as it pertains to, you know, how young people of color are taught to even start striving for those things.
Yeah, I'd add to that I think, millennials and Gen Zers are the first generation to be less financially secure than our parents. Mm-hmm. And that's really striking. And I remember my house falling into foreclosure in 2008, and that's a fairly universal experience for young people, not knowing necessarily where their next source of income is going to come from. On top of that, there's been a lot of descent into intolerance and bigotry over the past 5 or 10 years that I think has also shaped my view of how the US could be improved. As someone whose great-grandparents came here fleeing anti-Semitic violence in Russia, it's ironic in a really twisted way that now in 2023, anti-Semitic incidents are at an all-time high, the highest in 2 generations. So there's still a lot of work to be done.
I would say in terms of, the economic situation that our generation is in, absolutely right. Gen Z and millennials, the American dream for us is quite literally dead in America today. And I know I just touted it for my parents. They were able to achieve that quite well. And I've been proud of the career that I've been able to accomplish so far. However, when we look at our current economic situation, we are headed, like I said, for a depression the likes of which since the 1930s. And I believe that's a large part of the massive over-bloated bureaucracy that has become of our federal government. When our founding fathers wrote that Constitution, which is, in my opinion, the most beautiful document. Again, it's not perfect, but it created this country in which we live in, the systems that have helped so many people survive and thrive. The government was supposed to stay out of the people's way. It wasn't supposed to infringe on their everyday lives. And we've seen $32 trillion in debt, this nation right now. Our generation, because of that, over the past couple of years, is suffering from, the highest inflation we've seen in our lifetimes in 40 years. Mortgage rates, right, for instance, are the highest, interest rates as well. So it's becoming more and more difficult over the past couple of years to achieve this American dream. It's more expensive than ever to purchase a home, more expensive than ever to have a family. And that's really sad for our generation. And I do believe it's a direct consequence and impact of this massive bureaucracy we've seen over the past couple of years.
And Angela, being an immigrant and coming to America, do you personally feel that the American dream is attainable?
Absolutely. So I totally agree with all the economy parts that you've mentioned. So seeing the economy here in the US, especially in the tech space, across these 2 years, we can see how it has shuffled down. But on the other side, I just want to speak about some values that really brought me here. A couple of months ago, I was speaking to a reporter back home. Why are you here? Was the question. I'm getting a great education. I have these great opportunities. But really, something that is really keeping me here are the values that people have. I was always this chubby kid who was always bullied at school. I would say here people care so much less about how you look, but rather than who you are, which is not the case where I grew up. You don't have to be the perfect girl or the perfect person.
I'd also love to know if you see yourself represented in government.
Well, I would say that even though I'm coming from a very unprivileged background, my privilege to be white has unfortunately bring me some positives in the country, which I would say unfortunately, but it has been there and I have seen it a few times in the past.
I think about that as a Jewish woman. I am absolutely white passing and I identify as white, and I think in so many ways that has afforded me a lot of privileges in America. So it's interesting hearing that from your perspective as someone who came here and feel that that has afforded you the same privileges. I love hearing your perspectives and what has informed them. Now what we want to do is bring in perspectives from the larger Gen Z community to add some dimension to our conversation. So keep an eye on the group text and let's keep going.
Hey, it's Abby Benton from the Conversationalist community. Thanks so much for watching our POVz episode on America. The best part about TC is that we want to hear everyone's points of view, including yours. Just text the word USA to 1-877-222-1119 to get access to all things TC, and we hope to feature you on a future episode. See you next time!
I know we're going to be great friends. That's the ingredient. That's the equation to me for any good conversation. Some balance between humility and curiosity.